What is up, my dashing dudes? I am the Hans TV, and today we find out that apparently not giving your seat up to somebody makes you a butthole. Let's learn about that and many more in today's episode of r/Am I the Butthole? Our first story for the day comes from Throwaway NYUI. Am I the butthole for not punishing my son after he came up with a pretty elaborate plan to peep on the neighbor girl topless in her backyard? Lots and lots of ugly background here, but I'll try not to wander. My wife and I have been separated for 2 years, inked a peeper on an ugly and contentious divorce in May. I have primary custody of our 2 kids, daughter 17 and son 14, and live in the home which we've owned for 20 years. On Monday, I came home to find my son and 2 of his friends up on the roof to our little sun deck. I asked him what he was doing and if he was being safe. They said they were playing Army, and since I've coached the other 2 kids in mountain biking for almost 6 years now, I knew their parents wouldn't mind either. So, I told him to put the ladder away when he was done and to keep his phone on in case I needed him to come down. I was actually most perturbed because he didn't put the ladder away. So, they did this every day this week until Thursday, when my daughter came home from her CIT job and, in her ever so sweet and acerbic tone, asked me if I was really so stupid to think my son and friends were playing Army, and let me know the real reason is that our 22-year-old neighbor was in her backyard topless and Aiden had set up a perch on the sun deck to get a better view. I climbed up thinking that she was just trying to get him in trouble, but sure enough, the deck had a perfect view of the Chase Lounge where I assumed the girl had usually sat. I told my son to knock it off, and he said he would. This morning, I got an angry knock on the door, and it was my ex-wife and the neighbor. They have been friends for many years, and apparently the neighbor called my wife sometime midweek and they had agreed they would confront me and my son on Saturday morning. We sat down and it went from a calm, "This is something we're concerned about," to accusations of me being an irresponsible absentee parent and my son leading an adolescent sex ring in a matter of seconds. I tried to remain calm and explain the fact that they are just acting like 14-year-old boys, and I've gotten them to stop. My wife asked if I planned on punishing him. I said that I don't feel like he did anything punishment worthy, and rather this was a learning experience about respecting people's privacy. My neighbor said that if he were her son, he'd be in intensive psychotherapy and medicated. I told her that was really overkill. My wife told me not to talk to her friend like that, and I asked him to leave before it got any more nuts. My wife has texted me that I am being incredibly irresponsible, and if I don't do something, she's going to have her lawyer to revisit the custody agreement. In all of that, she called me a butthole several times and said it was more miserable being divorced from me than it was to be married to me. Yay, weekend! I guess that's about it, but am I the butthole for how I'm handling the issue with my son? Our next story comes from Prickly Food. Am I the butthole for calling out a father at a restaurant? I'll try to make this short because I hate reading long posts on here. My wife and I went shopping at a mall today and decided to pick up some food at one of the restaurants attached to the mall. Not food court, but sit-down restaurant. It was around 5 p.m., so right at the start of dinner rush. Service was fine and our server was incredibly friendly. Toward the end of our meal, a family, father, mother, and son, probably around 8 years old, are seated in the booth behind us. By this time, it was getting a bit busier in the restaurant. It takes maybe 2 to 3 minutes before the server comes and takes their drink orders. She then went to tend to that and other tables. About 5 minutes pass and I hear the father start complaining. "Why is everything taking so long? This server is lazy. It's been 5 minutes, why hasn't she taken our order? The service here is terrible, they deserve a 4 out of 10 rating. Maybe I need to speak to the manager." It was driving me crazy because it was freaking dinner time and they were busy. My wife and I finish our meal and pay. As we are leaving, I step over their booth and just kindly address the father. "Excuse me, hi. So, we were sitting at the booth behind you and just so you know, you're a real prick." And then I walked out before he could respond. My wife thinks I was totally justified because our server was super nice and kind, but I just wonder if I overstepped myself. So, Reddit, am I the butthole or does everyone suck? Because seriously, screw that guy. I don't think you suck. I think you did the right thing. Putting somebody in their place? Good on you, man. Our next story comes from Groundbreaking P. Am I the butthole for not paying for college for my pregnant daughter? My daughter is 17 and pregnant. She doesn't want to abort and won't consider adopting. Before the baby, we were planning to pay for our daughter's tertiary education. However, we have rescinded the offer of paying for her education. She is very upset. We would prefer her to stay with the baby and delay her college. She wants to have the baby and go off to college while my wife and I look after the baby. I don't want her to think she can leave the baby with us. My wife and I both work full-time jobs and neither of us are ready for retirement. If she has the baby, she has to look after it or get a job and pay for daycare. I've been speaking to a family friend and he says he might be able to get an admin job for my daughter which pays $2,000 a month. It's a relatively simple job and would help a lot when the baby arrives. When the baby is old enough to go to school and she decides to get her college education, I would be happy to fund her education then. After we sat her down and told her we won't be able to look after the baby and won't be paying for her education next year if she has the baby, she told my wife she's now considering abortion. Am I the butthole? I feel like we have unintentionally pressured her into getting an abortion. My wife thinks we've just forced her to stop and see her situation in a more realistic light. Our next story comes from Awk Throwaway. Would I be the butthole if I asked my dorm roommate not to do the hanky-panky while I'm also in the room? An explanation is obviously in order. I'm a 19 female student, sharing a dorm with an 18-year-old female. Our place does have an improvised partition of sorts to separate the beds, which I think was put up by previous residents because I haven't seen it in other rooms. There's a pretty thick and large blanket hanging off of it, meaning you can't see through. But still, you can hear pretty much every sound coming from the person on the other side. On multiple occasions at night, I've heard my roommate, well, making certain types of sounds. I believe she tries to be quiet and discreet, but it's not as ambiguous as she thinks. The situation is pretty awkward because it makes me feel weird and it's difficult to fall asleep. Now, what I'm wondering is basically this. In this scenario, am I the butthole for being too affected by my roommate's activities since the thing is taking place on the other side of the room and I don't see her? Is she the one being inconsiderate and inappropriate? And would I be the butthole if I brought this up and furthermore asked her to at least wait until I'm gone? The latter is what I do anyway. Our next story comes from Shaolin Kid 87. Am I the butthole for getting annoyed that I now have to take an extra 40-minute detour to drop my friend home every time we go into the city? A very close friend of mine recently moved out of town, about an hour away. On weekends, a few of us go into the city to eat and just chill. The drive into the city is about an hour. We usually start heading back around midnight. My mate moved around 4 months ago and he's been meeting us there, and I drop him back, which takes about 50 minutes from the city to his and then another 50 minutes from his place back to my town. Recently, it's been getting harder, as we've been leaving a little later and I'm getting tired after dropping him and then having to go that extra 50 minutes back to mine. I've been getting home around 3 to 4 a.m. I've suggested a few times for him to get the train back from the city, but I felt bad and just dropped him off. So, last night my cousin's girlfriend was out with us and I suggested that he get the train back, which takes about 30 minutes. As he's looking up train times, my cousin's girl says, "That's a bit harsh making him take the train back, isn't it?" Maybe we just have different standards. It kinda hit me as she's a lovely person and I was quite surprised that she would say that. A few other words were exchanged after that, and this made me feel kinda crappy, so I offered to drop my mate home. Am I the butthole for getting annoyed and suggesting my mate gets the train back? Our next story comes from Throwaway 484928399. Am I the butthole for refusing to interact with my 13-year-old stepson? I've been in my soon-to-be stepson's life for 3 years now. He's turning 14 soon, and after a recent string of events, I've decided that I'm done trying to form a relationship with this kid. He clearly doesn't want one. Over the last 3 years, he has cut up a bracelet his dad gave me, put dog food in his dad's eggs, lied to me about his dad talking to other women, stolen my Mortal Kombat X video game, played sound clips of someone yelling, "Begone, thought!" repeatedly when I entered the room, referred to me in stories he told his family as the evil witch, peed in a cup because he thought I was in the bathroom and didn't want to risk interacting with me by knocking, threatened to punch my 5-year-old in the face if he didn't stop pestering him, refused to apologize to me and even interact with me in very mild ways. Example, his dad asking him to let me know they were leaving. He would say, "Okay, then not do it." He won't even sit in a car with me while his dad runs to the store, even if it's a super quick in and out stop. Kid will refuse to stay with me, refuses to talk to me, and will end conversations with anyone if I'm brought into the conversation. And lastly, most recently, he told my mother-in-law, his grandma, he He feels uncomfortable around me and that he heard me say I don't like him. Lie. And who knows what else, because now her and fiance are fighting because she doesn't feel I should be alone with the kid if he feels that way. Obviously, this caused an even bigger rift. That was last week. This morning, my fiance asked me to play a board game with him and stepson. I refused, cited everything I posted here, and said the kid clearly doesn't want me around and it makes me uncomfortable, and when he's rude to me, fiance doesn't correct him, so no. Fiance exploded, said stepson is a kid, I'm an adult, I should act like that, accused me of calling his son a butthole. I didn't say it directly, just what I've said here, and then said my 6-year-old is a butthole too. I've refused to pick up his calls since this happened a couple of hours ago. Am I being the butthole? Should I just play the game, even though I'm sure the kid will refuse anyway? Edit. We have both tried talking to the kid. Every time, he has claimed to like me and said he doesn't have any problems with me or our living situation. As for biological mom, she is also in a relationship and has full legal custody of the kid. However, his home life wasn't the best from what the kid told us. And then bio mom brought him to us due to kid hanging with a bad crowd in our area. And we had him full time for the last 8 months and have also tried gaining legal custody. However, now, it looks like we are settling on a split 50-50 custody. Am I the butthole for refusing to accept my parents' gift and then walking out? Throwaway, as my dad uses Reddit. So, I'm close to graduating high school and have been applying to universities and looking at some by doing the tours and stuff. My parents have decided to give me a gift for when I graduate. It's $10,000 towards my uni cost. I remember screaming and hugging my parents and thanking them. That was until I found out the terms and conditions. I can only go to 2 universities, they're the ones closest to my parents, and they gave me a selection of courses I can pick from. Surprisingly, art degree is not one of them. So, I told my parents that I can't accept the gift as I don't want to abide by some terms and conditions. I also told them it was kinda crappy to pay me to do what they want me to do. I explained that I now feel bad for being super excited because I definitely can't accept my gift now, knowing what the rules are. This caused a massive fight, where I was called ungrateful and that I'm not a nice daughter. So, I walked out of the house and have been staying with a friend until this cools off. Reflecting back, I do think that I might be the butthole, but I'm unsure, so I've come to you. I will accept any judgment. Our final story from the day comes from Griezmann, Barcelona. Am I the butthole for not wanting to move to a middle seat on a plane because a woman didn't want to sit between 2 men? Mate and I, both 26 and 27 males, flew from Madrid to Frankfurt for the wedding of our friend, who lives there now, and used seat selection to pick an aisle for him and a window for me, in the same row, hoping it would be empty and no one sat there. A woman, also in her 20s, came and realized she was in the middle seat and that my mate and I knew each other. She asked if she could not sit in the middle of us. We said, should have selected the seat then. No. She explained that this is her connecting flight via codeshare and that she could only get seats select on the main legs of her flight, with the airline operating them, but not this ticket, Frankfurt to Singapore and then Singapore to somewhere in Australia. We told her, too bad. We didn't want to move seats. We were disappointed someone was put in the middle, but I wanted the window, mate wanted the aisle. Instead of accepting this, she started typing something on her phone and flagged down a flight attendant and passed them the phone. I guess she complained in that way instead of having the guts to do it so we could hear. Flight attendant then said we had to move so she was not sitting in the middle. My mate is claustrophobic and really likes the aisle. I didn't want to move from window either because I like looking out during landing. They doubled down and said one of us has to move, so I said, fine, which can have the window. She objected to the window because being between 2 large men who are strangers and a wall was triggering and uncomfortable. I rolled my eyes and she said, I have been both assaulted and groped by men before. I'm not comfortable about it and this is triggering my anxiety. A guy sitting across from us called us both buttholes, gave her his seat on the aisle, and the flight attendants made my mate go in the middle and let that guy have the aisle. He also blocked us getting up and off the plane until she was gone and off, and we were given a ton of dirty looks. The flight attendants were really rude, and when we spoke to them at the end of the flight, they seemed to have decided that we are douchebags and ignored our complaints. Were we the douches? She wasn't going to get attacked on a plane, and I'm honestly sick of women crying, me too, and anxiety to get out of things. You drew the middle seat short straw, suck it up, princess. Alright, my dashing dudes, that will do it for today's episode of r/Am I the Butthole? If you like the stories, all of them will be linked down in the description as always. If you liked what I did here, go ahead and leave a sub and a like down below, as well as a comment telling me what you'd like to see in the next video. But with that being said, I will see you in the next video.